Okay, so hello and welcome everyone to New Moon 2021 Cycle 8, also known as Blood Moon number 2. Today I'm your host playerzero, and this will be our second of our Blood Moon series. So yesterday we had a lot of very explosive matches, but we basically couldn't get enough. So we had too many matches we wanted to show, not enough time, so we decided to go again, and here we are. So before we start, I'm just going to briefly explain what this tournament is about. And how it works. So New Moon is our weekly round robin tournament that it's basically similar to a normal tournament, but we play it throughout the week, so people can play their matches at any point, which obviously is a lot better for people's availability. Normal New Moon is more about structured casual matches. People play relaxed builds usually, a lot of new players experimenting things. But now we have Blood Moon. So Blood Moon happens every three New Moon cycles, and it's a special 3-week tournament. So week 1 and 2 being the round robin stage, which we are still in, and then week 3 is the top cut bracket, which the people qualifying for will be decided based on the results of the first 2 weeks. And by the end, the winner of the tournament will receive the special Moon Master role. So that will always be something to keep an eye out on, see who's going to be the winner for this tournament. Okay, so going to be joining me today on commentary is Neryth. Hello, Neryth.
Hello, playerzero, and hello, everyone. It's great to be here, and I'm hyped to cast some of these amazing sets with you guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you. All right, without further ado, we can head into the setups for our first match with BlueStar vs Rocku.
Okay, so at a glance here, BlueStar is running 5 Buster Ups and Plugged Buster in the cust, so this is a Buster Jam setup, I would think. And it's very interesting to see this in Gregar. Is encode, of course, so you're packing Muramasa in code. It's missing SP navies, so it's only running 3 mega chips, and of course it has kernel force. It is replacing Indis with Reflector 3s, so the defense in this folder is a little bit more unorthodox. Definitely Reflector 3s are a very interesting chip to run.
Yeah.
And I believe that's it for BlueStar in terms of the most notable things in this folder, in this build.
Yeah, I mean, so going into Rocku's side, so we see a mix of mostly R-code chips, but there is a bit of a splash with M-code as well. So we see Risky Honey, Muramasa, and the Grab Banish. I don't think we quite have Sun Moon PA. I think we're missing the Meteors.
Yeah, it does look like there is. Yeah, there's no Meteors here, so not quite Sun Moon.
Oh, but we also see the 2 fast gauge. So fast gauge is going to speed up the turns considerably, which will affect how these players interact. So both folders have a lot of good options, a lot of explosive damage. But then when fast gauge drops, especially as the red chip for Rocku, then BlueStar will obviously have to adapt, since they don't have. Actually, they do have 1 slow gauge, but the only one wouldn't be quite enough to counteract fast gauge fully.
Yeah, being outmatched in the gauges does mean that BlueStar will be forced to play towards fast gauge, and so at most with 1 slow gauge you can hope to get a single slow gauge turn off, where you'll have to maximize your damage over that turn. But with 2 fast gauges, especially one of them being regged, while the slow gauge is not regged, we can expect the majority of this match to be played out in fast gauge.
Yeah, so I think it will be very interesting to see how BlueStar adapts with Buster Ups, since fast gauge can be a bit tough for that. But without further ado, let's head into the match, see how they play it out. So we're watching from BlueStar side, and we see already taking 5 chips, with Buster Up being the first one of them. And we see that Reflector. So I think Reflector is a very interesting tech choice. It can be difficult to use effectively, but if you land it, then it can be a very big swing with blocking damage, from your opponent, and then reflecting it back to them.
Yeah, and I believe there's also the potential to get a counter hit with it, and that would grant full synchro. Ooh. A very early Groundman SP connecting from Rocku.
BlueStar still has the anti-damage in hand, so do you want to explain how Buster Bug works, since that's the main idea behind BlueStar's build?
Yeah, so the way Buster Bug works is that when you have bugged Buster parts in your Navicust setup, it creates a chance for your for your P shots in that match to jam. And what happens is there's 2 chances: one to jam, I believe, and one for a charged shot to come out.
Yeah.
But once bug fix is used, the chance for it to jam and not fire at all goes away. And I'm not 100% sure on this, since I don't play Bug Buster setups myself, but I believe that actually it converts to a charge shot chance. Feel free to correct me.
I think the chance for the charge shot is there regardless, but instead of jamming, now it doesn't. So you can fire normal Buster shots, which can do 10 damage with the 5 Buster Ups, but also you have chance for the 100 to come out randomly, which I think it's 3/16, so it can be really good.
Yeah, okay, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so Shadow in chat is saying 3/16 for the increased damage and 13/16 for level 3 bug. And obviously the level of the bug affects it, but if you're going for a Buster Bug build, then you want the highest chance.
Ooh. Oh, wow. That Reflector 3 does connect. Rocku swings into it. Yeah. Tomahawk charge shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the fun things about Reflector 3 is that your opponent is never used to seeing it, or they don't expect how long it lasts, since it's a lot longer compared to the Navicust Shield or Reflect. So your opponent always ends up fucking into it.
Ooh, and Rocku lands a uninstall Bubble Star on the ice panel, so it does result in a freeze, followed quickly by a Doll Thunder 3. Fortunately, does not get the double damage from the Doll Thunder, but uninstall still landing is going to be impactful here.
And I believe that Bubble Star also was a D-Cross as well, so that was quite a bit of damage to come out either way. Now we see more bees coming out, but then that Muramasa, so the HP is still very similar. This one tank could make a very huge difference if BlueStar is able to land it, but then landing Muramasa without Beast out, without any way to confirm, can be very rough as well.
Yeah, definitely this Muramasa is going to be kind of the turning point here.
Rocku going into SoulXCross, but then using that fast gauge, which will make it very difficult for BlueStar to take their time and use the chips the way they want.
Ooh. Oh, okay, so Rocku used an Erase Man, but BlueStar did a time freeze counter with Element Man, and thanks to the anti-navi that Rocku had, the Erase Man was eaten up, and then the input for the Element Man was also missed, so BlueStar didn't end up taking any more extra damage that turn.
Ooh, and I think BlueStar decided to take a new hand with chips. Ooh!
Oh! Muramasa connects from Rocku, doing a hefty 500 damage. BlueStar has fallen to 9 HP now, but retaliates with this Erase Man.
The Erase Man was boosted by 2x, but then Buster procs doing all of that damage, and then the TFC will finish off the game.
So that was a great example of how Buster Jam proc suddenly coming out can suddenly swing the HP. It dropped Rocku by almost 200, I think around 200 HP, suddenly disappearing. And that was very well played from BlueStar, waiting for that anti-damage as well to come out, and then countering with the grab banish.
Ooh. Counter hits, but
that... Yeah, so you always want to be very careful with the directions that you're mashing in.
Yeah. So the way mashing works is that when you're bubble, paralyzed, or frozen, each input you do, each different input you do can reduce the time you're in these statuses by 1 frame each. So in theory, you can make quite a bit of difference if you mash a lot, but that leads people to fall into the trap of mashing direction buttons they don't want to, or they mash A especially, since that can lead you to use chips when you don't mean to.
Yeah, an interesting thing to note in this matchup is that Rocku does have the Groundman SP, but BlueStar looks like is not going to be relying on the Gregor crosses very much at all. So there doesn't really seem to be potential for ×2 damage on Slash.
Both sides playing it patient, and there it pays off with that Golem hit connecting.
Yeah, Golem hit's damage is nothing to scoff at. It is 250, I believe, so it's a rather hefty hit.
Yeah, and I think it and Tank Cannon 3 are really nice additions to M-Code, since you can basically try to bait your opponent into movements that can make them more likely to be hit by them. Now we see BlueStar debating what to take in hand. We do see that Colonel Force, which is a very strong option with a Windrak as well, so this could be the turn to go for it, but are they going to play it more patient?
I personally want to see BlueStar try to pull off the Colonel Force, because it does seem like this hand is just too good for it not to take this turn, and at the same time it will clog up BlueStar's hand if they just sit on it. And because their endgame is Buster Ups and the Buster Jam procs, I don't think they lose too much by using an early Colonel Force.
I think one thing they might be trying to keep in mind is that when you go into Beast Out, then the damage increase from Buster Bug that goes away, it doesn't apply in Beast Out, so maybe they're trying to be mindful of that and trying to avoid being locked into Beast Out for 3 turns.
Yeah, that's true, and I don't believe Rocku has dropped Fast Gauge yet. There it is now. The Fast Gauge would make it much quicker to get through these Beast turns where BlueStar isn't going to get the Buster Up bonus or the Buster Jam procs.
Yeah. So
now that the Fast Gauge has dropped from Rocku's side, BlueStar may feel more comfortable.
And I see someone asking in chat, why would you want to use Windrak with the Colonel Force? The main reason is, one of the main counters for Colonel Force is your opponent having Life Aura, but then if you use Windrak, then obviously you can very easily deal with that. But also another thing that people don't realize is that Windrak pushes the opponent, and while the opponent is pushed, they can't act. So if you can basically use Colonel Force and then straight away use Windrak, that will give your opponent less time to react with their defense if they have anything, like anti-damage, for example.
And there's the Groundman SP from Rocku.
We see deciding to take that Q-Force, though without the Beast Out, Q-Force doesn't do too much damage. Beast Out is a very vital part of allowing Q-Force to really shine.
Yeah, definitely the damage of Colonel Force is diminished. In fact, it's doubled with the Beast Out. Yeah. So, but what is interesting here is that BlueStar can use this Colonel Force, the paralysis time, and line up with his opponent and just Buster Jam proc repeatedly. So I'm not sure if damage will actually match what BlueStar would get if they just went to beat or went to Beast, but it might still be close.
Yeah, and there is always the element of surprise when if you're playing against someone and you know their Gregar, you know their Giga is current force, then obviously if you see Beast out, that's basically a red flag. They only have 3 turns for Beast out. They want to, more likely than not, they will use the current force during these turns. So that's just some of the mind games that can go into these matches.
So the Colonel Force does connect, and BlueStar was trying to fish for Buster Jam procs against Rocku during that time, but unfortunately he only had 2 panels of Colonel Force to work with there.
Now Rocku dropping the area grab, which although because of these ice panels will still make it difficult to land these charge shots, and BlueStar is more than prepared with that grab banish anyway. Ooh.
Rocku so now falling dangerously low thanks to that grab banish.
Yeah, and this interaction isn't really ideal with how it works for Rocku, because the things don't apply until after the area doesn't come back until after the time freeze ends. So by Rocku using that sanctuary and it being grab banished, BlueStar was able to regain all the area and the holy panels as well for free. Ooh, Meteor Knuckles coming down, getting few hits, breaking few panels, but locking in BlueStar, which can be really big.
Ooh, I see BlueStar basically out of chips here, only having some defense left over.
Ooh. Oh, nice. But these holy panels were able to keep that life or alive, but then the wind rack called that short. And now, as you mentioned, BlueStar is still stuck with 2 chips, but having life aura and anti-damage can be really good 2 final chips you want to have.
Yeah, especially with the Buster Jam procs that BlueStar is relying on here. With this kind of HP difference, about 500, a little bit more than 500 HP between them, BlueStar is in a comfortable position here.
Yeah, that being said, I believe Rocku still has that Muramasa hidden in hand, so we might see a Beast out coming and trying to confirm that this turn, so this could still very much go either way. And there goes that Beast out. Let's see if they can connect it or the Life Aura comes out first. Ooh. Nice. So what we're seeing here is BlueStar is trying to get to use their Buster shots, since I don't think, did they use all 5? I'm not sure if they're already at attack 5 or not. But basically, they are trying to remove the anti-damage through it.
I'm not 100% sure that they ended up using all 5, or if one was discarded at some point. But Rocku here really hoping for this Muramasa to connect, I would think.
Also, so we have on YouTube, George is asking, I always hear people say that Falzar is better than Gregar for competitive, which I don't think that's actually true. I mean, both versions are very good in their own rights as well. They have different playstyles, but both are very much competitive, have won tournaments. Oh, ooh. BlueStar is considering what they want to go for.
Oh, I see what was happening there. The anti-damage was not getting popped by BlueStar's Buster because it's the Holy Panel is reducing it from 10 to 5 damage. And BlueStar closes it out here.
Yeah, Buster shots.
Buster Jam procs. Buster Jam procs, putting in a lot of work towards the end. You can see when both players start to run low on chips, the build that BlueStar was running does offer a little bit more towards the end game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, you have to basically invest 5 chips and then always have a bug build. So you have to use bug stop as well. So basically, you're investing 6 chips into the game, but then the payoff is that at the end of the game, you have very high, that's potentially easy to land damage. You can deal with traps very well. So it can be a very dynamic battle at that point.
Oh, Nonstopmop in Twitch chat does mention that the trap didn't proc even on the hit of anti-damage. So that must have been Rocku's anti-navi.
Yeah, that is a good point. But yeah, well played to both sides. So now we're heading into our next match with Sorio vs E Flamez.
So we're seeing once again here in our code folder. But this one, I do believe this one does have Sun Moon.
Ooh.
So there's the attack plus 30, the uninstall, and the meteors. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not this PA gets used and whether or not it connects. Other than that, there's 2 Bubble Star 3s and a Ball Thunder. So there's the bubble combos. Of course, only for some reason only one elect chip to follow the Bubble Star combo. So missing a little bit of potential damage there. And then the SP Navi chips being taken, roll 3, which is in code. And then Element Man SP, always a good choice. The amount of damage it does, and the extra utility from this mega chip, they do tend to be very impactful.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the Bubble Stars, I think they can also be a really good way of confirming Sun Moon, since you ideally want to hit the opponent when they're 3 panels away from you, and Bubble Star is on code, so that's going to mitigate one of the main weaknesses of some of the PAs, where they can be very difficult to land otherwise.
That is true. Otherwise, one would have to use Erase Man or Judge Man or one of the mega chips to try to confirm, which can be difficult as well. And it is an 1800 HP setup, so there's no attack stats, but there's Hub Batch, so it will Sorio will eventually get that extra attack. And on the opposite side, we have and this is a Falzar versus Falzar matchup. This Blood Moon did skew more heavily towards Gregar, so it will be interesting to see Falzar versus Falzar here. And E Flamez here using a very cursor-heavy folder that is also packing Darkness PA.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen, I think it was last week in Normal New Moon, where we had Ubu landing that Darkness boiler. There is no boiler this time, but Darkness can still potentially be quite good damage if you can connect it, which obviously is the problem with most PAs. A single anti-damage or invis can block pretty much all of it, but if you land it, then you can swing the match heavily.
Yeah, that's for sure. Especially if it's a grass field, and that first hit will hurt a lot. But it is interesting here to see machine gun 2s and 3s being run here, 3 of each, and the machine gun 2s and the Wood Dragon in G code also being potentially paired with the uninstall. So it is so both players do have uninstall potential on each other, and the folders or the Navicus being run are also quite similar. Major difference just being Cust 3 versus Cust 2.
Yeah.
Sorio going to be relying on that Hub Batch to fill out that final Cust space.
And yeah, I believe that's pretty much everything for our setups. We can head into the match, and then we'll see whose PA ends up landing in the end.
Ooh, and break the storm, or is it breaking the storm? Do you know if it's which one it is?
No idea. I basically don't know anything about the older games, so I'm not the best with this stuff.
Older games.
I mean, is that one of the BN6 tracks?
Yeah, this is from BN6.
Neryth calling me out, calling my PV information.
Well, in any case, E Flamez here. One final thing to keep in mind is there is no invis for E Flamez.
Oh, and we already see Sorio with 2. I guess that's the PA in hand turn too. So they do have the Element Man to maybe try to confirm it, but obviously that's not as ideal because the range for it is going to be different for the ice into the PA. So we'll see if they end up going for that. Okay, looks like that's straight away the play. Let's see if it actually connects. It will be a very big swing if it does.
This is going to be a very interesting turn. Rush coming up and taking that invis. Oh.
Could still work. SoulXCross does have the B back, which can pull the opponent into you. Which, there it goes, puts you into the range of Element Man Ice. It does connect. Let's see if the PA actually lands. Okay, there it goes. The uninstall laser and then the final hit, breaking or cracking these panels. Ooh, nice movement.
Oh, and E Flamez is also trapped on this this panel here, with the broken panels stopping their movement.
Yeah, so E Flamez is probably going to go into either Tengu or Beast Out. So Sorio is thinking about taking the Wind Drag. I mean, taking the Life Aura, which let's see if Tengu Cross does come out. E Flamez thinking through the turn, seeing the options. So they are in a basically rough position now, but again, you should never count your opponent. The difference can be very easily equalized.
Yeah, E Flamez probably debating whether to switch to Tengu or go into Beast. Because E Flamez may still want Dust Cross in order to continue to get the trash shoot and shuffle chips around. He decides to go into Tengu though.
Ooh, Life Aura dropping straight away, which might be a bit unfortunate, as it wouldn't last for that long. Ideally, in a position like that, if you're Sorio, then you want to hold onto your Life Aura and use that for a TFC, or use it near the very end of turn, because that way you deny your opponent for as long as possible being able to remove it, so you can potentially get more value out of your Life Aura.
Yes, that is true. And unfortunately, E Flamez tried to use Judge Man there, but it was on a panel, a broken panel that was in the process of coming back. And so the Judge Man did not have a panel to stand on.
Ooh, and looks like Sorio is going for that Tengu Cross charge shots, which is, I don't think they have Habatch out yet, so it's not quite the highest damage. Never mind. Well, there grab comes to the right. Ooh, nice. Going for the race man. Let's see if there is any follow-up. Sorio doesn't have anything in hand. We are in fast gauge now, so that will affect how basically heavily both players want to invest into the turn. Ideally, you don't want to take all 5 chips and then end up having to throw away 1 or going into the next turn with a less than ideal hand. But you can, if you end your turn, you still have chips in your hand, you can press OK again as long as you don't take any more chips, and you will keep your hand, so that's something to keep in mind.
So Nonstopmop in Twitch chat says, I'm guessing Flamez' charge level isn't 5? That took a while. I do believe Flamez does have charge max. Both players should have charge max. It's just that the Tengu rack does have a long charge time. Ooh, an anti-damage there, removing Sorio's Tengu Cross.
Nice, and then these area grabs giving the time freeze, basically allowing the E Flamez a bit more of an opportunity to look into the turn, see where they want to move. That's something you see sometimes, where your opponent uses time freeze chip, which lets them avoid something that would have been a lot more difficult to react to. Ooh, Magnum deals. Oh no, the unfortunate miss.
Ooh, and the same basic interaction occurring there. Now E Flamez losing Tengu Cross to the anti-damage star. A lot of machine guns being fired between the two of them. E Flamez machine guns being Machine Gun 2 and Machine Gun 3 doing much more damage.
Ooh, ball coming down to that Judge Man. Will deal 2x, but then the Elements Man hopefully going on grass. There goes, will deal with these holy panels. Ooh, bubble follow-up will bring down to 1 HP. Oh no!
This will connect one hit, but the second hit will not connect.
Yeah, that would have been game, but now Sorio has the chance for a comeback, trying to go for a race man. Ooh. A single buster shot, though now E Flamez has the opportunity to go into Beast over stall one turn, but then E Flamez doesn't know that full cast is in hand, so Sorio can just take that and instantly end the turn. Looks like they are thinking about it, but maybe they don't realize that's how it works. Ideally, you want to start with that full cast. Ooh. Okay.
Falzar Feather does close out this first game in Sorio's favor.
Yeah, so it's difficult to know exactly what was happening from E Flamez' side, but basically, they might have expected that full cast since we still haven't seen it, but also you don't usually want to go into Beast Over unless you have to or you have a good hand. So sometimes you don't want to depend on Beast Over just missing everything. You want to basically take matters into your own hand when you know you're more likely to land stuff.
Especially under Fast Gauge.
Yeah.
With Fast Gauge, the Beast Over invulnerability is also drastically shortened.
Ooh, the Elemental Man SP will deal 2x damage on these grass panels.
Yeah, just a very clean, very quick 480 damage.
Actually, I don't think we've explained it. We've already seen Rush activate in the previous game and this one. Do you want to explain how that works? And Beat as well.
So Rush and Beat are PvP Navi custs, and what they do is Rush will wait for your opponent to try to activate Invis as long as it's not within a time freeze counter chain. And it will take your opponent's Invis and then paralyze them. Ooh, Sorio suffering from a decross here. That Magnum connecting.
Yeah, so that was an interesting position with the area grab. So Sorio was playing it patient, trying to keep their life aura for TFC, but then because I think in that position you wanted to use life aura in response to the area grab, because that way your opponent wouldn't be able to use a Magnum, for example, or an Erase Man, or even a machine gun, since we know that E Flamez has all of these as options for a very big decross. I mean, that is one of the very difficult parts of the game. It's basically trying to get that split-second response, having to keep all of these in mind during that small window for the TFC is obviously going to take a lot of experience.
Ooh, both players going to Tengu Cross here. Sorio's life aura is going to be removed quite quickly.
Ooh. Nice. So what we saw there is Windrak applying that drag effect that we talked about in the previous match, which basically cancels your opponent animation and forces them to be pushed back until the end of their panels. GamerKev is asking in YouTube, what does beat do? Just take away a chip? And I mean, that's pretty accurate, but it only takes away the first mega or giga chip that's used outside of time freeze chain. So that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes you want to intentionally wait for your opponent so you can TFC to keep your chip, but sometimes you want to throw away the thing you don't really want.
Yeah, generally speaking, in the end, rush and beat will have to be fed.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh no, missing that Magnum.
Oh no, the Judge Man is not going to connect.
Ooh. Yeah, so
yeah, Judge Man does require a panel to stand on.
And I mean, that's the case for most Nabis, unfortunately. Very few of them have air shoes. Tengu and Blastman, I think Crawl as well, being the obvious ones with air shoes. Okay, so fast gauge is down now, so these turns are going to be much more quick, going to be ending much more quickly, and now we see that Sun Moon PA, if it's again, so there is that erasement to try to confirm it, but it might be a bit difficult to do so, so we'll see if they end up going for it.
Does look very tempting here, and yeah, Sorio just locked it in. It will be difficult to find this opportunity to connect with the Erase Man under fast gauge.
Ooh, oh no, again!
No.
And yeah, that was really unfortunate. So these whole panels, especially in fast gauge, because whole panels last a set amount of time instead of turns. So in fast gauge, obviously they would last for more turns, making it a lot more difficult to try to use navis there. And yeah, as Shadow is saying in chat, that Magnum miss, which was unfortunate, ended up stopping 2 navis, so it ended up working out, I guess.
So we have seen the Sun Moon now doing only a partial hit, just the very final part, yeah. Which does not uninstall, I believe. While E Flamez should still have Darkness waiting in the wings.
Oh, nice, using Sanctuary. Looks like they will be able to avoid that machine gun, but again, E Flamez still has plenty of other options for cursor chips. So let's see. I don't think that machine gun is going to survive for too long then.
Beat coming down, taking away one of E Flamez mega chips.
Yeah, that was also another anti-damage decross, which anti-damage can be pretty tricky to avoid in terms of movement with how it works. Ooh, nice, using the anti-damage just in time.
Ooh, this roll will not connect, but the recovery will still come through for Sorio. While this Judge Man from E Flamez connects, 2 books land.
Ooh, machine gun coming out as well. The HP difference is looking a bit rough, but now Sorio only has 2 chips, so that 280 final HP might be difficult to try to go through. I don't think Sorio has stack stats, yeah, so actually was Habash dropped, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure either. Oh no.
Unfortunate, so they were still flashing.
At all.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that Element Man fire hit does put Sorio into a blinking state, so the darkness did not connect.
Ooh, and I think in this situation it's interesting, but Sorio, what they would have wanted is to cross cancel so they don't get decrossed by the anti-damage. Ooh, uninstall coming down.
Ooh, and yeah, Sorio did pop the hub dash earlier, so does have the Buster stats to work with here. Neither player ending the turn. Sorio has no reason to do so, but E Flamez looking for an opportunity to use these chips, I suppose.
I think in terms of damage judge, if we end up going into that, Sorio would be winning there. And Beast Over does come out, but unfortunately we wouldn't be there for that long. Now E Flamez' HP is going to drain very quickly to go down to 1, which at that point single Buster Shot will be enough to finish. And there it goes.
Yeah, Sorio does close out this set. Well played to both players there, both Sorio and E Flamez.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that PA exchange, but I guess this match does highlight some of the main weaknesses of these PAs. While they can cause a very big swing, you end up investing 3 chips, or in the case of E Flamez, you end up investing your Giga chip, which can in the end basically just miss.
Yeah, definitely. Sun Moon can be very difficult to hit with, and it is almost a requirement that you have Erase Man or Judge Man, preferably, to confirm the Sun Moon. And on the other hand, Darkness, you know, just using the base anomaly by itself is already a lot of damage.
Yeah.
The damage from Darkness is a little bit less conditional than base anomaly, but I feel that you kind of need a grass field in order to fully take advantage of Darkness.
Yeah, that is fair.
But again, yep, go ahead.
So I was just saying that sometimes, especially in terms of, I mean, I guess that applies to both PAs this time. Sometimes you want to try to use, you don't always have to go for the PA just because you have the parts. Sometimes it's a lot better to just go for the individual parts and then try to maximize your value out of that.
Yeah, definitely that's another approach you can take. But yeah, again, well played to Sorio and E Flamez in the set. And I believe we will be moving into our next set of the day, which should be Snugs versus Maple. So this is going to be a Gregar versus Falzar matchup. And Snugs is running the Chonk Gregar setup, an extremely chunky Gregar with 2200 starting HP. But what's interesting here is Snugs is choosing not to run Recovery 300s, so this 2200 HP, what you see is what you get. There will be no way to boost it back up here for Snugs. And it is a pretty standard Gregar setup. Charge max and attack max, so the important buster stats. And then Element Man SP, Tanker Man SP. These two Navi chips are kind of aimed at limiting your opponent's cross options. The Tengu Man SP to check other Gregar's Erase Cross kind of threaten it. And it also just has a utility against Life Aura and barriers in general. And it doing 2 hits, it can potentially remove an anti-damage at the same time. While the Element Man SP simply has a lot of elemental coverage, can threaten quite a large number of crosses with a 480 damage decross hit.
Yeah, I mean, Tengu Man is one of the 2 TSP Navis, which I believe they are often undervalued. I think you usually try to add them into your folders, but they can have really good potential. So Tomahawk Man has slightly limited range, but doesn't apply flashing, and if you can get that with the decross, then it can be very scary as well.
Yeah, that is true, and I do believe that they are undervalued. But what's interesting is that if you think about it, the other 2 extremely powerful SP Navi chips that are in the same code together, what you might think about is Proto Man SP and Blast Man SP in B code. But both of those mega chips are stronger against Falzar, right? Blastman SP threatening Tomahawk and Protoman SP threatening Tengu, and those two are very common crosses for Falzar to use. But on the other hand, the T-code SP Navi chips, Tengu Man SP and Tomahawk Man SP, they both threaten Gregar, while the Tomahawk Man SP does also threaten Elec Cross.
Yeah.
And Tengu Cross, so it does have partial coverage into a Falzar Cross. They are extremely anti-Gregar Navi chips.
And we also see that Snugs is running the G-code with static, going with the bug build, but also interestingly enough, we see another PA, which is actually pretty rare. We don't usually see PAs being used, but now we have that bodyguard as well.
Yeah, it is kind of strange to see the bodyguard in this situation because I don't believe I see a white capsule paired with it.
Yeah,
so we'll be dependent on the uninstall.
Yeah. Uninstall can be a very big option here, especially against the build that Maple is going for, which is Bug the Thunder double Giga with Habbatch as well.
That is very true. One of the things Bucket of Thunder is dependent on is being able to complete your charges, and if you lose super armor, your opponent can simply continuously interrupt your charges and prevent you from shooting any Dark Thunders out onto the field.
So we see Maple's going for also a bit of M Splash, a bit of JV, so there isn't really a set code, I guess, which you don't always have to do. Sometimes just running the things you need is more than enough.
Yeah, that is true, and I would call both of these builds relatively meta builds, the Chunk Gregar and then the Hub BDT Falzar. And both of these builds are a lot less dependent on chip damage, and more Gregar being more dependent on their crosses and beast for damage, while Falzar, this specific Falzar setup, being more dependent on Bug Death Thunder for its damage. So it is less combo oriented. So we'll see how this plays out.
Alright, well, let's head into it. Okay, so as we head into the match, one important thing to keep in mind is the exchange that's going to be happening with Dust Cross from Maple and Race from Snugs. Do you want to explain how that works out?
So first off, Dust Cross is a very desirable cross for Falzar to go into early because it allows you to smooth out your hand, smooth out your folder, and sort through and pick the chips that you want. Using the trash chute to cycle chips back into your folder. So going into it very early is a very common move, especially for BDT builds. But on the other hand, Gregar has the perfect answer in the Erase Cross, which Snugs is going into this turn.
Yeah, so
an exchange between Navi chips here.
And as you've mentioned, so Falzar players want to go for Dust Cross and then going into that full cast, but now Snugs already knows basically the loop that's happening. So, okay, I would have expected them to go into Beast Out to try to get these chip charges, and then getting that very, very heavy D-cross on Maple.
Yeah, definitely that's the typical gameplay.
Ooh, uninstall goes out straight away.
Yeah, that uninstall attached to the Machine Gun 1 does connect on Snugs.
Yeah, unfortunately, Snugs wasn't quite able to get out that life arrow, which would have blocked everything. So that's... You usually want to be patient, want to use your defense at the right time, but in this case, that backfired.
So Maple does get this second turn with the trash chute, or rather third turn, considering they got a free turn using the full cast.
Ooh, and we see them going into Tengu Cross to remove that life orb, but we also have that hab batch as well. So they are probably very close to finding the chips they want to. So they don't care for dust as much.
Ooh, Maple stepping into a second hit with that Prix beam, however. Very nice. Snugs connecting with Element Man SP Ice. Freezing Maple for a short time.
This could be very painful. So Snugs does have a bit of movement. They can try to avoid these charge shots, but if they connect, they also add up for that HP bug, which you can see ticking very quickly now.
Yeah, and those Tengu racks, those Tengu charge shots, they will be doing a significant amount of damage now that Maple has popped Hub Batch.
Bodyguard is coming out, so there is an interesting interaction where if you can get an anti-damage on your opponent's Tengu charge shots, then they are confirmed.
Oh, and this will confirm the majority of the bodyguard, all but one hit. Although Maple does have the option of mashing out.
Yeah, I think that was about 400 damage, which isn't great, but that is still very nice. Ooh. That Windrak had the perfect timing to deal with that life aura straight away, and now they're exchanging charge shots. But as mentioned before, you can see the HP bug is starting to add up very quickly.
Maple at a huge HP disadvantage here, but I do not believe they have used the recovery 300s yet. So after accounting for those recovery 300s, they would be about even, but Maple may not get a chance if they don't pull the recoveries this turn. Snugs is looking to go for the deletion here with Kernel Force.
But we also see the beast out coming out from Maple, so we'll see if either player are going to be able to push their pressure on. And beast going down. Snugs is limited to 2 panels, but that is still more than enough with Beast Buster especially. Let's see, there is no more defense, it looks like, which will take us into game 2. I think in that position it was a bit difficult for Maple to try to see what's happening with the opponent's hand, but usually, especially with things like Invis where they time out, you want to be a bit more patient, basically waiting for the threat to come, then you use it. And in that position, if Maple was holding onto that Invis, they would have had enough time to react, and then maybe would have survived into next turn, and who knows from there. We do see, as people have pointed out already, these permaholes. So these are special field panel that can only happen when you have them spawn, and basically they can't be taken by the opponent or fixed. So they will stay there until the end of this game.
Yeah, and they greatly diminish the effect of Kernel Force, the potential effect, because Kernel Force requires an unbroken panel. And these permaholes, they count as broken panels, so Kernel Force will not spawn soldiers on them. So against the Gregor player who's running Kernel Force, you can simply camp the row that has these permaholes on it, and your opponent will never get maximum damage.
And it also denies some of the Tengu plays that we might want to see Maple go for, like last game, because you can't have that full area, so your opponent will always be able to have a bit more leeway with movement.
That is true, but it actually does not interfere with Tengu Beast plays, so if you ever wanted to do the Beast charge, it's actually the ideal shape.
So I see people in chat are asking, what does Habatch give exactly? And basically it gives air shoes, float shoes, attack speed and charge max, shield and undershirt. It doesn't give you super armor, which is something very important to keep in mind. And custom 8 as well, which I forgot to mention, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, Humdash gives so much that it's difficult to recall exactly all the things it gives. This could end up developing into kind of a tough situation for Snugs if Maple is allowed to stay within a Dustcross all this time and eventually pull BDT and Hub Batch. And here we see the Hub Batch coming out.
So this field could be rough for Snugs, especially because while they do have that Gregar with high HP, they are missing out on both shoes options. So these permaholes can mean very limited movement or can mean they get locked in more easily. We see that bodyguard again, but I mean, yeah, Snugs still doesn't quite have the ways to confirm it, and they don't even have that erase man from last game, so only one hit will connect if they are lucky. I think in this position they might want to either wait on it or use the individual parts.
So Treesby in Twitch chat asks, does HP bug count for damage judge? And I believe it does not count towards damage judge, so HP... Oh, the Super Falcon here connects for Maple, but it is on Holy Panel, so it does half damage. So I do believe it does not count towards damage judge, so HP drained from the HP bug will not factor in if it goes to the final turn.
And now we see the movement, so Snugs does have these holy panels which will reduce the damage by half, but now Maple knows that that wasn't anti-damage, so it has to be either anti-Navi or anti-sword, so they will basically be careful around it. They are very similar in HP, only 13 HP difference, which obviously isn't going to be there for long. And oh, we see that uninstall. If uninstall is able to connect with that bubble star, ooh, there goes the anti-navi, which looks like that was intentional, basically wasting that that usage. Okay, there goes that bubble. Now, one of the common plays for Gregar players to go against Bug the Thunder is to basically hit them with flinching attacks. So charge shots, chip charges, pretty much anything can flinch Maple now, which will interrupt that Bug the Thunder charge.
Unfortunately, Snugs was in Beast that turn, so there was nothing to... There's no charge shot potential. But now, going into another cross potentially would allow Snugs to interrupt Maple's charge shots. Maple also retaliated with their own uninstall attached to a wind rack, so both players are now uninstalled.
Ooh, let's see if that grass connects. It does, and that will deal with these holy panels. And now Snugs in a bit of a tough position again because of these permaholes in the middle. Their movement is very severely limited. Oh no, just barely missing on that 2x, but they still go for ice, which was a very nice play. Groundman SP will also break panels, which makes it even more difficult for Snugs to try to move around. They are holding their position, they don't want to break these panels already, they want to have a bit more leeway with movement. Very nice patient play. Let's see how they play around it. Now we see Snugs is thinking about going into one of the main ways to counter Bug the Thunder, which is Charge Cross. So your Charge Shot in Charge Cross gives you invulnerability frames, which basically gives you a free out to Bug the Thunder if you're able to line them up. But obviously these permaholes make that extremely difficult to do. Oh no, that broken panel. There goes. That's what you want to see from Snugs, being able to deal with these permaholds, and now, I mean, with these Bug the Thunder charges.
So this is a kernel force, but it will be a unboosted kernel force, just a raw kernel force here. So the damage will not be too significant.
Ooh, and that Blast Man. Yeah, I'm not sure if they meant for that to happen, but that Blast Man gave Maple flashing, which allowed them to more easily avoid the starting hits of Bug the Thunder.
Yeah, only the very final shot from the back row of the kernel force actually connected with Maple there.
And we see Snugs being very careful with movement. Their HP is still very similar. This could very much be anyone's game, especially with Snugs being able to be a bit more aggressive with their charge shots. Oh, nice, being patient, just holding onto that charge. Oh, and even using that to force one of the bolts to go off the field.
Oh, wow, that would have been amazing if the anti-sword actually came out and Snugs was standing there to block a Muramasa with the anti-sword. That would be quite a statement to make.
Yeah, now Maple goes into the only option for Fazar players to regain super armor, which is SoulXCross, after seeing that Snugs probably used up all of their cursor chips. Ooh.
Oh, and Maple does close it out. Going into game 3 here. And yeah, ground cross is the it does grant Falzar players super armor, so it is the option to regain it. We see the same opening here again. Maple going into Dust and Snugs going into Erase Cross.
Proccing Crush at the end of turn, so now although Snugs will be paralyzed, they can just cross cancel or go into a different cross or beast outs, which we might see in this case, which will remove them from the paralyzed state. Looks like they will be going, or at least thinking about going into Cross, which can be very strong, especially with that BlueStar, allowing them to gain a 2x with their next charge shot. Ooh, that immediate uninstall with Windrack. That was a very risky play to go for from Maple, but it ended up working out.
And these cracked panels are going to limit Snugs' movement a little bit, but the Erase Man connects regardless onto Maple, removing Maple's SoulXCross quite early into the game as well, and that was an uninstall attached to BlueStar. So both players already uninstalled, although Maple has the option to regain certain Navicust effects using Hub Batch.
But now, so Snugs is still looking quite ahead on HP, but again, so we've seen it time and time again. Players can, out of nowhere, deal a lot of damage. We've already seen that Maple has that Muramasa. We've seen Super Vulcan plus 30. We've seen how oppressive Bug the Thunder can be if your opponent is not careful with their movement. Very grab exchange, and then both players using their defense. The Element Man SP is going to be very, very painful if it connects 4 Snugs, so Maple will have to play very cautiously with their defense. Ooh, it does connect. Yeah, that will decross.
It's 480 damage, and decross should be very, very hard for Maple to deal with, especially with the Electros charge shots still coming out here.
And it looks like Snugs is considering that life aura for defensive turn, which is probably the right play. You want to basically try to capitalize on the advantage as much as possible.
Life Aura and a Trap coming down for these players. Bug Depth Thunder being dropped, but at such low HP, it will be difficult to get a lot of value out of this.
Nice.
And this Judgment will actually interrupt Maple's BDT charge.
Snugs playing it patient is very nice, and then going for the Elect charge, which will connect, and no undershirt will mean that we'll finish up the game.
Yeah, well played to Snugs and Maple there.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very explosive game. We've seen both sides just use all of the resources available to them, doing a lot of damage, getting ahead, and then basically trying to capitalize on all the advantage they get.
Yeah, it was definitely very interesting to see, especially the approach towards the early game from both players. Typically, the Gregar player wants to decross the Bowser player's Dust Cross as soon as possible. So that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, moving into the next set of the day, which I believe is Wazi versus Alrysc. And this will be a Gregar versus Gregar mirror matchup today for this set between the two of these players. And although it is a mirror matchup in terms of versions, these folders are quite different. It is a G code coming from Wazi and a J code from Alrysc. And so we've seen before that Gregar versus Gregar matchups can be very explosive, very, very volatile matchups with a lot of HP suddenly disappearing from both players, actually, just trading back and forth. So Wazi's G code running some of the more common G code chips, Bubble Star 3 Heat Dragon Wood Dragon combo, so creating grass on the field and then using it to do double damage with an attack of the same pattern, the Heat Dragon Wood Dragon. And obviously uninstall is in G code, so there's that potential to remove your opponent's super armor and shoes. And the Groundman SP will be a big threat in this matchup. Alrysc is going to have to think carefully about going to /cross because the potential damage output of a Groundman SP connecting on /cross, it would double the damage from 390 to 780. And both players running Judgeman SP as well as Judgeman, so a very area-oriented game. Except that Alrysc does not have that many area grabs, a lot more defensive area control with Grab Revenge, along with the panel returning effects of Judgeman and Judgeman SP. While Wazi has more area grabs, will be playing a little bit more aggressively, I would think. And both players electing to go for Kernel Force in for their Giga choice. Might be a little bit more difficult for Alrysc to land a high damage Kernel Force due to only having 2 area grabs. So those 2 area grabs will have to be used very carefully to maximize the damage with Kernel Force.
Yeah, so I think, one interesting thing, as you mentioned before, both of these are Gregar players, but they have very different builds, and one of the main differences that we're probably going to very much see during the match is that Wazi is going for charge max with 1 less custom space, whereas Alrysc is going for charge 3 in total, so their charge time is going to be about 10 frames slower per charge shot. So if Wazi is able to capitalize on basically the increased pressure they can land, then this could be very huge for them, especially with uninstall, because if you can interrupt your opponent's charge shot before they finish, then obviously you can maintain your advantage, keep interrupting them as much as possible.
Yeah, that is true. And really, I see a lot of interesting folder chip choices coming from Alrysc here, like the 1 Sandworm 3. It is something that can catch your opponent off guard.
Yeah, so Alrysc is going for that J code, which does have that Destroy Pulse PA, which is very often considered to be the best PA in competitive PvP, because it basically gives a lot of very strong effects. Because of very long blind, it gives custom HP bug, which is a unique effect that it's being the only thing that gives that in standard BN6, which basically means your opponent loses their HP slowly when they are in their custom, so they are a bit more limited on time if they don't want to lose too much HP.
Yeah, and one final thing I want to note here in this, looking at these setups, is that there are no gauges for either players, it looks like. So the entirety of this set will be played out in normal gauge. There will be no tug-of-war trying to determine what gauge it will be.
Alright, well, let's head into the match, see how these things end up playing out. There is a lot going on for these players, so it's going to be very interesting to highlight some of the basically complex interactions that could be going on. I think one thing we can start with mentioning is that I've seen a lot of players recently, as at least Gregar players, start with a regged wind drag. So we've already seen the very big value that wind drags can have in previous matches. So dealing with a life orb, uninstall even, so it can be very good. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these players basically manage it between them and how they use it. Both sides have air shoes, so these cracked hull panels will be less effective, although they will stop most navies from spawning. Ooh, element trap is coming out, which will trigger the Punisher, which will mean that this bubble that has uninstall is going to miss. What an interaction.
Yeah, it's very hard to say who actually got the upper hand in that interaction there, because that was Alrysc's Punisher, that the Guardian that was ended up being popped against Alrysc, but it actually prevented the Bubble Star from landing.
And yeah, so the BlueStar had uninstall, and I mean, we've seen how big uninstall can be in previous matches with flinching, so I mean, I'm tempted to say that in the end Alrysc had the upper hand in the exchange.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Gregar can get super armor back, but only for a limited time using Beast out.
Ooh, and now we see Wazi is going for that slash cross, which is basically the highest DPS option for Gregar crosses if you are able to maintain that +1 area, which looks like they are for now.
And you can see both players trading back and forth here, their HP just rapidly dropping.
Ooh, that bubble connects, which will lead up into a Heat Dragon.
And Wazi here not even bothering to wait for the Wood Dragons to come out in their folder. It's gonna go ahead and straight up use these Heat Dragons for the damage, not getting boosted by any kind of panel effects or anything else, but still just using them to maintain this momentum. And Alrysc already falling down to 180 HP here, a very dangerous situation. But Kernel Force comes out on this turn for Alrysc.
And that will be game already. I mean, we've seen how crazy this match. This was that turn 3 or 4 even. I mean, that game was very explosive. Goes very well to show how can some of these Gregar mirror matches, especially at low HP, go.
Yeah, we saw rapid overturning, just back and forth HP levels, just flipping back and forth continuously there until Alrysc closed it out with that Kernel Force. So it's definitely very important to keep your eyes peeled wide open during these Gregar versus Gregar matchups.
Oh, sensor being dropped there, which is an interesting play, which looks like it does get some value.
Oh wow, a lot of hits of that machine gun landing on Alrysc though, but that sensor play was very good. It actually cornered Wazi and made it so they could not step out from that panel without receiving the hit.
Unfortunately, that barrier is going to go straight away into the area grab. Area grab does deal 10 damage if it connects. Ooh. There was a very
Wazi getting the
combo.
double damage from that Element Man fire on grass. And Alrysc was uninstalled by that Wood Dragon, so...
That paralysis exchange though, that being said, oh no, never mind. Well, I was going to say that Raceman paralyzes for a bit less, but I guess a miss will... Ooh, nice.
Alrysc gets decrossed by that Bubble Star, but retaliates with a Pulse combo. A Pulse Wind Rat combo, but falls to 1 HP at the end of this turn from a slash cross charge shot.
Yeah, I mean, we saw last game, Wazi was 700 HP ahead basically, and Alrysc was still able to finish it, so we'll see how it ends up this time. Ooh, Grab Revenge will give us a hint at the code that Alrysc is going for this turn, which does mean Colonel Force is coming though. This unfortunate Raceman miss might mean this will completely miss. Yeah.
Ooh, in that situation, that could have been a completely different outcome if Alrysc had connected with that Erase Man.
And
as it would have left Wazi vulnerable to the Colonel Force finish.
Yeah. There was a very interesting interaction there with how Colonel Force works. So basically, after it spawns, it will continue spawning even if the panel breaks or you lose control of these panels, which is why for a brief moment there we saw Colonel Force from Alrysc spawn on panels that Wazi should technically have.
So Alrysc does waste this Grab Revenge, but Wazi used that Erase Man while Alrysc was off the field technically from the charge tackle. Yeah, these are such volatile games because of the sheer amount of damage between both players while also running relatively low HP. So there's a little bit of chip waste and stuff like that. The Grab Revenge not having an effect, and then the Erase Man not connecting. But it just doesn't matter because of the sheer amount of damage that both players are putting out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've even seen Destroy Pulse being used already, and we're at game 3, so...
Man SP connects on the frozen Alrysc, and a recovery 300 tops Wazi off.
Ooh, nice. Using pulses individually, maybe Alrysc is deciding that it's more value to just use them trying to get that damage as long as they can, because they probably realize there isn't much time to try to look for combo pieces.
That is very true, and they did end up doing a very significant amount of damage back to Wazi, actually 500 even after Wazi went back to max.
Ooh. Unfortunately, that Wind Drop being used a bit too early, which will miss out on the opportunity to remove this life aura. Wazi's looking for a very offensive hand with the bubble to confirm that Wood Dragon for the decross, and then the Hate Dragon, which will do 2x damage, so the game could end during this next turn depending on what Alrysc ends up taking. Ooh, that life aura though. Wazi still has the chance to remove it with Wood Dragon into Hate Dragon. Barely missing. We see no Wind Drag, but instead Wazi decides to go into Beast Out, which your beast charges do more than 200 damage for all of them except for lacking Gregar. So that is another option to deal with life aura.
Alrysc did put down this very sad-looking Thunder at the end of the turn. Thunder does tend to have a lot of PvE value because obviously the viruses and navis they can't cross cancel if you paralyze them on turn, so it does allow a lot of comboing. But in PvP, it tends to have a lot less value.
Ooh, barely didn't quite manage to avoid it. But now the Beast Charge will deal with the Life Aura from Wazi, but then Q-Force lands, is it? Okay, so that wasn't an anti-damage, so it will do a bit of damage, but now Alrysc still has the opportunity to cross-cancel, then maybe use some defense. Ooh, Guardian, very interesting. But yeah, unfortunately, objects do not protect against Colonel Force. So the way Colonel Force works is similar to the Vulcan series, where it can hit an object, but it also hits the panels behind it, or the panel right behind it, which means that would have hit either way, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting and I would say kind of rare interaction to see, because usually by the time Colonel Force comes into play, there aren't any obstacles on the field. But that is actually very interesting. That means that you cannot hide behind an obstacle and have it absorb Colonel Force hits for you unless you're standing way far behind like 2 panels behind that obstacle, at least. But yeah, well played to Wazi and Alrysc there. Another really back and forth, unpredictable Gregar versus Gregar matchup today.
Yeah, I mean, we've had all of our matches today were basically all action, just very intense, everything happening at the same time, and that was continuing the trend as well. So well played to both sides. And now we'll be heading into our next match with JoeyKobalt vs Virillion.
And it will be another Gregar versus Gregar mirror matchup, but very, very different builds here. At the very least, if you look at their Navicusts, the amount of HP is going to be, there's just going to be a stark difference. JoeyKobalt running a much lower HP, 1500 with attack max and air shoes, whereas Duri is going to be running the Chonk setup, 2200 HP with attack stats, super armor, no shoes. And so it is B code coming in for Virillion, and you'll see the SP Navis, of course, Blastman SP and Protoman SP, alongside a lot of the typical damage chips coming from B code, Machine Gun 3, High Boomer. Interestingly enough, no Risky Honeys. And on JoeyKobalt's side, we do see this folder is somewhat similar to the one we just saw. It does have the Alec Pulse 1, 2, and 3 to create a best pulse PA, but it does have an extra pulse 3, so there's potential to use one of those.
Yeah, I mean, so this is going to be very interesting. So we already saw last game how Gregar can be very explosive, but this time we even have, I mean, so from Joey's side, we have very few or very limited defensive options. So only one invis, life aura, and then the options for bodyguard. So we might end up seeing bodyguard from Joey, but again, there is only the uninstalled preferment with no white capsule.
Yeah, bodyguard without white capsule is much less reliable. Even if you manage to uninstall your opponent, there are ways around it. If they trigger the bodyguard at the end of a turn, for example, they could actually cross cancel and just dodge the rest of the bodyguard stars. So there's lots of counterplay available against a bodyguard that is not white capsuled. It's a lot more difficult for these bodyguard stars to combo into each other and just hit lock your opponent.
Yeah, and even if you are able to get your bodyguard out, you use it waiting for your opponent to proc it, there is always that risk of cursor chip. So we see from Virillion's side the 3 machine guns 3s, which can be a lot of damage, but also deal with any of the traps that you might have out. So that is going to be one thing to keep in mind.
And one very interesting thing to keep in note in these setups is that JoeyKobalt is choosing to run Delta Ray Edge instead of Kernel Force. So you don't see this Giga run too often for Gregor, mainly because the area it requires and the positioning it requires from your opponent is kind of can be difficult to, you know, wait for your opponent to step into the perfect area for it. And if your opponent knows that you have Delta Ray Edge, they can simply camp the top, and you won't be able to get any damage out of it. One of the advantages it does have over Kernel Force is that it doesn't require the user to have any kind of area advantage. You can actually have an area disadvantage and still get the full damage out of Delta Ray Edge, as opposed to Kernel Force, where the damage is heavily dependent on the amount of area you control.
Yeah. Again, on Joe's side, we do see that Destroy Pulse as splash option, so we might end up seeing that actually work this time. Who knows? Yeah,
that is true. Joey does have less custom in their Navicust than I believe the previous Gregor did. So it is going to be more difficult for Joey to pull it off. But depending on the amount of pressure coming from your opponent, you might have a little bit more time to work with to pull out the Death Pulse PA.
I believe that's everything. Well, let's head into the match, see how it explodes by the end. Okay, so one thing we didn't mention, an interesting tech play from both players actually, is using Poison Seed. Poison Seed can be a pretty effective option at dealing with your opponent's Sanctuary, but also with slow gauge especially, adds up that slow tick damage, which over time can be very big.
Yeah, that is true, and that's a very funny coincidence that both of these players are running a single Poison Seed.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Joey does not have a Sanctuary for Virillion to deal with a Poison Seed, so we'll see how that ends up being used. It can, of course, be Beast Charged.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've seen it as much, but Beast Charges in Gregor are one of the main options that you can do for damage. You can basically take a defensive turn with Invis, anti-damage, stuff like that, but since all of them are null chips, you can also chip charge them and use them only when needed.
Ooh, and Viri loses Charge Cross right at the start here into a Groundman SP combo. First hit does double damage to the frozen Virillion. JoeyKobalt pulling off a very high damage Navi chip combo right off the bat.
And then being able to maintain the +1 area with Slash Cross, this is going to be a huge turn one, dealing over 1,000 damage in one turn. That is such strong start. But I mean, I've said it plenty of times already, and I will keep saying it. One turn could be all the difference.
Yeah, I believe that was almost 1,600 damage or so that Joey did in a single turn. So you can see exactly how potent the Gregor crosses can be, and the Slash Cross adding so much extra damage there. But Joey did also manage to get such a good combo off at the start with the Element Man and the Groundman SP.
Ooh. Oh no, the unfortunate timing on the Invis meant that the Poison Seed had just enough time to go down and actually start taking in that damage. Had Virillion stepped under it without the Invis, it would have only taken one panel instead of the whole 3x3. Ooh, nice. The anti-sword, Virillion had no way of confirming it, doing 300 damage and protecting Joey from 160. Now, Joey deciding to go into Beast Out. See what options Virillion end up having. These Beast Pulses can be very dangerous. 7 HP, which is ticking very fast with Poison Seed. Let's see if there's enough time.
Ooh, and Viri will be able to step off into the grass, but this pulse should confirm it.
And yeah, stepping into the poison panel, you won't take me, I'll go by my own. Now going into game 2 straight away, again showing how very explosive, even with all of the HP that Virillion has, even with the recovery to 300 options that Virillion could go for, it just end up so quick.
Probably taking a little bit more time to think through the crosses at this point.
Yeah.
Knowing that there's such a high damage retaliation possible for going into slash.
Going into
as well as but even going into this charge cross. Ooh, eating that uninstalled machine gun.
Now Joey decided to stay in base Mega Man, so Joey has the range advantage, and now Virillion decided to hold on to that slow gate just in case a repeat of the last game happens.
Just there's got to be some feeling of pressure coming out here, because even in this charge cross, just potential as well for an Element Man SP ice to hit and do 480 damage is also something quite terrifying to think about.
Thinking a bit through the turn, knows that he's limited by area, unable to connect his charge shots, so ends up going into a race cross, which is also a very good option. Ooh, and this coming down. So while a race cross charge shot isn't actually a cursor element like the cross, it does pierce invis, so that's why we see that one connect.
Ooh, and you can see the value of that earlier uninstall coming through, Virillion getting flinched by this this erase cross charge shot.
Ooh, Joey going into beast out, taking a small pulse play. Looks like Destroy Pulse won't see the light of day this match.
Dude, and that machine gun clipped Joey and removed that trap.
Ooh, and that led into the follow-up with Tengu Man, which will decross. Now we'll see how scary race beast chip charges can be. They can home from anywhere in the field, or at least if your opponent is in front of you, and then they remove both invis and traps, so it's a very strong option to go for.
So we did see a Delta Ray Edge in JoeyKobalt's folder right there, but unfortunately it would not do enough damage at this point in time, as well as it being difficult to confirm a full 3 hits.
Ooh, Q-Force coming out, Joey not having enough defense to deal with it, and that will take us into a game 3. Now we'll see what crosses they decide to go into. It looks like Joey is starting with that erase cross. It looks like it's an erase mirror match. Ooh, Poison Seed is going straight away, but Virillion has enough time to react to it, though that meant he did take all 4 hits from that machine gun.
Ooh, and oh wow, there's just a number of machine guns coming out between these 2 players, both of them trying to use this the boost from Erase Cross to get a bit more damage.
And as we saw there, the counter window for machine gun can be a bit big, so Joey unfortunately ended up suffering the side effect of that.
both players choosing to go into Erase Beast this turn.
Ooh, I'm not sure if Joey meant to do that TFC there. Oh, and that
the Erase
missed.
Tail misses. Oh no, and Blast Man SP on grass, the classic combo doing 500 damage to Joey.
Yeah, that is one of the main reasons why B code can be very strong. So you have a lot of options that can make grass panels in Boomer and Wood Elements Man Wood, but you also have fire hits and the Blast Man SP doing massive damage as well.
Ooh, Windrat connecting for Joey here, leading to a D-Cross on Virillion.
Ooh, but now Joey's HP is getting very low, but then again, that Delta Ray could do a lot of damage if it connects. There's these two area grabs, there are still options. Ooh, Sanctuary dropping, which basically doubles the effective HP that Virillion has. Man going for fire, bringing Joey down to 200 HP. So area grab will deal with the trap, but oh, that heat charge does connect.
So unfortunately, Joey is looking at their options here. There isn't anything to deal with these holy panels.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Beast Out just ended from Joey. One of the options Joey could have gone for is Elect Beast, as your chip charger in Elect cracks panels. Ooh, and the two recovery 300s coming out from Virillion. Then Buster Shots will finish off this match.
So Virillion does take the set in a 2-1. Well played to JoeyKobalt and Virillion. That was a very interesting matchup. So you could see that even with that 2200 HP start from Virillion, that if played right, JoeyKobalt could simply burn through most of it very quickly. I think doing almost 1600 damage in the first turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that turn, Virillion started with 2200 HP and went down to 600, something like that. I mean, that was crazy.
So Tough Bunny 13 in Twitch chat asks, are Mastercross / Sun Moon viable PAs? Do you want to take this question, playerzero?
So I mean, it's an interesting question to ask, and I think it's fair, especially given how strong PAs can be when playing through the story, which is what most people are exposed to. But unfortunately, in PvP, PAs end up being very inefficient. So for Sun Moon or Mastercross, you end up having to use 3 or 4 chips that are typically very strong. In fact, sometimes it's stronger to use the individual parts than the PA. And in the end, your opponent ends up having a single anti-damage or a single invis, and your whole thing is gone. So ends up being very inefficient, very difficult to use correctly. But I mean, we've already seen plenty of people say, I basically don't care. I want to go for it either way.
Yeah, and definitely I wouldn't say that choosing to use those PAs will necessarily stop you from winning games.
Yeah.
But it does become a situation where if you want to maximize the viability of your folder and your build, and you want to play to your utmost potential, that you'll have to start to also think about when you want to break up the PA as well as simply trying to use it. Simply pulling the PA and then having it in your hand and going, well, I pulled it, so I'm going to use it. That can lead to some unfortunate consequences as well. So it becomes a question of decision making and using your judgment to achieve the best possible outcome.
And yeah, I mean, there is a lot that can go into it. And as Uwe was saying in chat, I mean, if you're having fun, then you're winning in your own way, which is very much fair. We all play because the game is fun and we play to have fun.
Yeah, definitely. I do respect the players who play for the style points, play
Yeah.
for play for fun, and it's not always about trying your absolute hardest to win at the expense of having fun, right? It's possible to strike a balance and accomplish both at the same time. And I think that is honestly the ideal, because at the end of the day, Battle Network 6 is a game. And if you're not having fun while playing the game, then at the end of the day, how many times are you going to end up playing that game? How long can you play that game, right?
Yeah.
But again, well played to Joey and Virillion in that last set. And I believe we will be moving into the next set of the day, which should be HonorNite versus Thiago.
That is correct.
And so this will be a Falzar versus Gregar setup. And HonorNite has a pretty interesting setup here with the Bug Buster and the Hub Batch. So you do see J-Code coming out, obviously, because Hub Batch is J-Code. So HonorNite did also take Judgment SP and Elect Pulse 2s into these wind racks. So we've seen this this kind of double-sided, or this double threat coming from HonorNite just yesterday. And what it is the Elect Pulse 2s and wind racks serve as a very potent combination, being able to pierce certain defenses, removing invis from your opponent, and taking down their anti-damage very quickly, and then still being able to follow it up with a confirmed wind rack, as well as dealing with barriers and life aura and such. It can be very hard to react to this and to play against it as going up against this combo. And at the same time, after these Beast Rush turns, these combo turns are over, HonorNite still has this fallback of the Bug Buster setup to finish off their opponent.
And we do see HonorNite with that 5 area grabs and up bash. So, I mean, Thiago also has 4 area grabs, so we're expecting both sides. So there is very interesting interaction that people should watch out for, is how the management of area grabs. We've already seen in the just last game how SoulXCross with a single area grab can be very game changing. But now both sides have that potential. Both sides can go for plays like that. So we'll see how they try to minimize their opponent's area while pressuring their own.
Yeah, definitely the area game is going to be interesting to see. And on Thiago's end, we do have this 1500 HP Air Shoes Gregar setup. So it does have attack and charge max, which are the most important buster stats for Gregar here, and I would say in general. And Thiago here is running Element Man SP and Ground Man SP, so getting a lot of coverage. Ground Man SP to check other Gregar players, and just for the good damage overall, while the Element Man SP just having very good coverage and utility in general. And the Kernel Force as well, a lot of burst damage and paralysis coming out from that. And really, this is going to be focused on the Buster game. Not very much damage coming from the chips, I would say. A lot of it is utility and defense oriented. But there is the uninstall Wood Dragon combo, or Bubble Star that it could be attached to. There's even the machine gun. So there's a lot of options to that this uninstall might go on, just exactly how you want it to keep it unpredictable. And the defense from Thiago coming out a little bit on the sparse side, 2 anti-damage and 2 invis. So the 2 invis might be a problem because HonorNite is running Rush, and Rush will potentially remove one of those invis, leaving Thiago with only 1. And the only way for Thiago to play around that would be to wait for a time freeze opportunity. A time freeze counter opportunity with Invis, which would not activate Rush.
So also one thing to keep in mind in terms of the matchup. HonorNite does have the 3 Elite 2s, as you've mentioned before, and one of the effects that Elite 2 have is that they pierce invis. So this is actually going to somewhat work out for Thiago. He doesn't want to use his invis too early, otherwise there might be a split instance where it's just gone straight away.
That is true. So the invis might be best off used as the time freeze counter anyways, as they would be very quickly removed by E-like pulses. And finally, there is for the Kernel Force combo, it is Grab Revenge to start off, to quickly reverse and overturn the area situation, probably followed by at least one area grab into the Kernel Force, Gundel Soul, and Windwrack. All of these chips pair together very well, and when used in combination, they can result in a very rapid reversal of fate, really. But yeah, it should be interesting to see how this set turns out.
Alright, well, let's head into the match and see how all of these interactions end up going through. When we also see that perma-haul again, so we'll see this will probably be slightly less impactful this match, especially since Thiago has air shoes already and HonorNite has the half batch option to go into air shoes. But yeah, I mean, as you've mentioned in the previous time where we saw that it does affect Kernel Force very significantly, especially with HonorNite, if HonorNite is able to basically capitalize on that and stay in these panels.
Yeah, definitely. These two perma-holes, they do present a significant challenge to Thiago.
Oh yeah, and another thing that I don't believe we fully covered from Thiago's build is the 2 Geddons that he's running. Geddon can be a very strong option, especially with uninstall, but the way this will interact is that Thiago will either want to use his Geddon very early to try to get maximum value before Habbatch drops, or wait until Habbatch drops, then his uninstall connects, then go for that Geddon to make sure that HonorNite isn't able to just use Habbatch to remove it.
So this is actually a very funny situation. Normally you see that the Gregor player has more HP than the Balzar player, but the tables have been turned here. I know there's a slight freeze.
Yeah, so these matches are recorded. Obviously, the commentary is live, but these matches are recorded, and the way we record matches doesn't show up the actual lag. So this is probably a good time to mention that, unfortunately, with all online play, some matches can end up having more lag than others, and I believe this one was played at slower speeds than what is basically ideal.
Yeah, and that is an unfortunate reality of having this international community, and you have to take the bad with the good, And personally, I'm quite thankful for being able to play with people across the globe.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have probably literally someone from everywhere, all over the world. So we probably find at least one other person that shares the same region as you.
Yeah, that is true. And so you can see this massive HP difference just right off the bat, 800 HP difference between HonorNite and Thiago. So we'll see how Thiago can overcome it. It's going to have to probably depend quite heavily on the Gregor crosses, but
yeah,
but there's a very limited selection as well of crosses that are safe from HonorNite.
Yeah, and I think so. One interesting thing that HonorNite is probably trying to think into is whether he wants to use that bug fix, which you'd think, I mean, why would you want to have bugs on purpose? But one of the bugs that HonorNite has is called Warp Step, which is caused in this case by a bugged Super Armor. And that was the reason why HonorNite was basically jumping between panels. And while that seems like it would only be a negative, it also can be a very big positive in being able to avoid your opponent's attack. so it looks like he decided to go with a bit safer place, just going with the bug fist right away, trying to go through his hand a bit more, especially with that life aura, which will allow him to stay safe basically for this turn.
Ooh, HonorNite getting this +1 area here. Ooh, and there it is, Hub Batch.
And the slow gauge as well, so HonorNite has the option of going into Tomahawk Cross, though this +1 area might not be too long, especially, I mean, as mentioned before, Thiago does have his 4 area grabs and plenty of ways to regain area with Judgment and Grab Banish. Ooh, looks like HonorNite decided to go for Spout Cross to get the D Cross, but also the pretty high DPS with the fastest charge shot in both versions.
And Thiago very quickly reclaiming this area while also popping HonorNite's anti-damage.
Ooh.
Oh, but this will probably lead to a D-Cross here.
Yeah. HonorNite playing it patient, waiting for that confirmed Erase Man into a D-Cross, and now with the uninstall especially. Oh wait, actually, I don't think...
No, Thiago does not have super armor. Yeah, so Thiago did elect to not take a super armor, instead having this this extra custom 1. So Thiago is running slightly higher cust than usual.
Yeah, I mean, I completely missed that one looking through the Navicast. So this is something that pretty much Thiago is the only one that likes to play with no super armor at all. But again, in Gregar, if you go into Beast Out, then Beast Out gives you inherent super armor, which will last for the whole of Beast Out, which is 3 turns. So that will mean Thiago is a bit more manageable in terms of trying to be interrupted. Ooh, and there goes that Beast Out. We might even have a Q Force then, but HonorNite does have Tomahawk Cross, which gives status guard, which means that he isn't able to be paralyzed.
Ooh, and Judgment SP, the whip does miss.
Ooh, Thiago maintaining the +1 area. He had that Q Force, but then flinching coming out with that Gundam Soul as well.
And Thiago managing to catch HonorNite off of the center row, getting a lot more damage out that Colonel Force as a result. As well as using the uninstall on HonorNite and using that flinching in order to also ensure that a large part of that Gundam Soul also connected.
And now we are going into HonorNite with Beast Out, so HonorNite can gain back these air shoes, but also that will confirm these Beast Rush combos, which they are very fast if HonorNite decides to basically mash all of them.
Yeah, Thiago will most likely be hard-pressed to defend himself against these combos. Ooh, but Recovery 300 does give a little bit more padding.
Ooh, so yeah, looks like HonorNite is doing the patient play, which...
Oh no!
Just barely mistiming it. So the play that HonorNite was trying to go for is to interrupt with the Elipros and Windrax. Basically interrupts the opponent's charge time, but the getting clipped there and the D-Cross was very painful, which this Erase Man will take us into Game 2.
Yeah, that was a very close game right there. If HonorNite had used that chip just a few frames earlier, then most likely Thiago would have been interrupted again. And if HonorNite had played that perfectly, then Thiago would not have a very good window in order to land those heat beast charges. Now we're starting with this grass field with Guardians.
Yeah, so we'll probably see HonorNite using the B-back dust effect, which will allow him to take these Guardians. Ooh. Thiago accidentally hitting one of them, which meant he had to take 200 damage, and now Beat will take one of the navis that Thiago had. We don't quite know which one. Ooh, Rush is activating at the end of turn, which could be an interesting play with Anger. Do you want to explain how that works?
Yeah, so the anger status, you can gain the anger status if you are paralyzed or statused for an extended period of time, a certain number of frames. I don't recall the exact number of frames, but so with that in mind, Rush, if your opponent has Rush, it will activate and paralyze you when you try to use an invis. So you can intentionally not mash when Rush activates, and this will allow you to sit there paralyzed for enough frames that you will gain the anger status if you are in base Mega Man form, and this will give you ×2 damage on your next chip.
Yeah, and I believe the timing to get anger is 121 frames, and Rush paralyzes for 150 frames. But it looks like Thiago wanted to take that as an option, but decided to cross out of it either way.
Yeah, maybe not seeing a very good option to use with the anger when the cust came up, but still, it was an option there.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting aspect to think about in terms of the mind games that could happen. Because if your opponent knows you have anger, they're probably expecting you have something good you want to use with that. So they might end up loading defense into the turn. But it looks like HonorNite still had that full cust in hand and ended up just using it straight away. And now he knows. We see the early bug fix into an early hab batch, which can be very painful for Thiago if that D-Cross connects. Ooh, nice movement. And that second Gaiden, unfortunately, neither of these are doing anything with hab batch being popped for HonorNite.
Ooh, and yeah, these tomahawk chops are going to be extremely painful to deal with.
And then HonorNite still has the Element Man for a freeze and 100 damage near the end as well. Ooh, Buster procs, we saw that.
Yeah, two Buster Jam procs coming in over there, firing off basically fully charged shots. And with the hub dash active, each shot does 50 damage. So suddenly losing 100 HP is actually very impactful.
And now HonorNite is loading a very defensive turn. He wants to maintain this area, maintain all of this pressure, especially with Thiago's very low HP now. Ooh, Slash Cross is coming out, so Thiago is able to gain a bit more consistency in terms of damage, though that might be difficult to do with, obviously, I mean, we've seen the defense, Impiz, anti-damage, Lifer as well, and then an Erase Man from HonorNite.
Ooh, and this should be the end of this game right here. When this Erase Man connects, it will be followed quite quickly by a Wind Rack, I would think. Or no, simply finishing with the Buster.
That will take us into game 3. So what we saw at the end of that game, HonorNite was waiting for Erase Man to time out, and most of the time, or the multiple options, the attacks that have multiple options, multiple outcomes, you can wait for them to time out, and the outcome will depend on the chip. So in terms of Erase Man SP, for example, it will always end up on the second panel it targets. So HonorNite there knew he can very safely wait it out instead of risking the lag and risking missing the input. HonorNite does have the double area play, but unfortunately that Gaiden will mean that he's unable to move freely and maintain the pressure through them. Oh, interesting. So it decides to go into the full cast instead.
Yeah, that is true. HonorNite choosing to use that full cast rather than sitting on it.
Well, now that bug fix, I think all 3 games, I think HonorNite was able to get that pretty early bug fix as well, though. I mean, do keep in mind, this is the real strength of going into SoulXCross. Your Dust is a very, very strong search options through deck.
Ooh, and this Grab Revenge is going to do a pretty decent amount of damage to HonorNite.
I think in that position as HonorNite, ideally he would have wanted to use Warp Step to move forward, and then use the defense, because if your opponent isn't able to push you off the area if they're trying to take it back, then obviously you will maintain that area.
HonorNite managing to pull 2 instances of this Electric Pulse 2 Windrat combo, but choosing to cycle all of it away, looking for this hub dash.
And there it is. Rush being activated on a barrier, so I don't think we've mentioned it, but having a barrier or being in Tomahawk Cross can also be one of the outs to Rush. Ooh,
Yeah,
nice
the paralysis from Rush does not take effect if Rush jumps onto a barrier or an aura, in this case Life Aura.
Ooh, and I was just going to say that this is why HonorNite was being very patient with that Wind Drag. So the way this works is that Beast Out causes you to jump into the opponent with Wind Drag, but if your opponent is very careful with their movement, then they can basically step into the panel that you're jumping on, which means they will avoid the Wind Drag, as Wind Drag only hits from the panels in front of you, it doesn't hit from your panel or behind you.
Yeah, and this even caused collision damage to HonorNite, which activated their anti-damage. Judge Man coming out for Thiago, but the 3 books will be blocked by this barrier 200 from HonorNite.
Yeah, so another thing to keep in mind is that HonorNite did have the option of going into Tango Cross, but as Beast Out, your B-back input becomes much more difficult. There is basically a 1 frame window where you have between the B and the back inputs, compared to I believe 7 or so frames in normal crosses, which is why HonorNite didn't want to basically risk missing it and then losing out on Tengu Cross.
So we see here HonorNite going into Tengu to deal with this. Oh, and this catches Thiago on the frame right before they would receive the invulnerability from Charge Tackle.
Nice, getting in the extra charge shot while HonorNite is able. But I mean, we see in this position, HonorNite did take the slow gauge, but he took it as the last chip because, I mean, I was going to say he doesn't want to use it, but again, we already saw her Buster Bug and what Buster Bug can do, so that's how HonorNite is trying to maintain consistent damage, even though his charge shot doesn't have the range to connect.
When Thiago did miss out on 2/3 of the Groundman SP damage because it was a direct hit rather than hitting the back row.
Yeah, Groundman SP only drops these rocks that crack panels as well if it hits the back row, which, as you mentioned, that didn't happen. Ooh, and looks like HonorNite is going for Tomahawk Cross, even though it can be a bit of a risky play, but he might be expecting that Q Force to be coming out, so he wants to maintain that stats guard. Though HonorNite is using his defense a bit too early, I'm not sure, because something exactly like this can happen. Eraseman dealing with both the anti-damage and invis.
Ooh, so we know this isn't the Kernel Force turn because of that Muramasa. Ooh, Thiago was charging that Charge Beast chip charge, but did not connect with HonorNite.
Yeah, so Charge Beast chip charge does have the added benefit of immobilizing your opponent. So while it's in the animation of being used, your opponent isn't able to move. But as we saw, that wasn't the case in here, because Tomahawk has Stats Guard, and Stats Guard is one of the ways to block the immobilize effect. Looks like HonorNite is going to try to finish off this game with this combo. Let's see if it all goes through, and it does.
Well, congratulations to HonorNite for taking that set, and well played to HonorNite and Thiago for that showing. That was quite an interesting set.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on between these two players, a lot of very interesting dynamics going on with their crosses, how they decide to play out. And I mean, we've already seen that happen, as in the thumbnail now, how the field can affect how some of these matches go as well.
Yeah, and despite that center permaholes field, I thought it was quite impressive that Thiago still managed to land a nearly full damage Kernel Force, and even squeezing in the Gundel Soul 3 due to uninstall and the Kernel Force hits, getting so much damage out of it. I really didn't actually expect it that turn, so props to Thiago for managing to pull that off still.
Yeah, well played. I mean, mind games is a very big part of the PvP, especially at the higher levels, as we've seen in this match.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with that, we will be going into setups for our final set of the day, which should be Nonstopmop versus SoulXCross. So this is a Falzar versus Gregar matchup, much like what we just saw. Except these setups, well, actually, no, this is actually still quite similar in some regards. Nonstopmop has a very high HP Falzar setup, 2100 HP, and SoulXCross has a 1450 HP Gregar setup. So again, we're seeing this situation where the Falzar player has quite a substantial HP difference, quite a substantial HP lead over their Gregar counterpart. And this is relatively rare to see. But when you take into account their builds, it makes perfect sense. Nonstopmop is running a BDT setup, which BDT setups do tend to have a bit higher HP than usual Falzar setups, while SoulXCross is running a more chip-oriented and not the chonk Gregar setup, but rather a more chip-oriented setup, and so there's a bit of extra custom there. There's custom 2 rather than a single custom 1, or rather in the Navicust itself it's 2 custom 1 pieces, but effectively the same. So lower HP in exchange for a bit more fluidity in the folder, opting for float shoes as well, so not going to be impacted by a lot of panel effects.
Yeah, and I mean, so looking at Soul's folder, so he has all of these F-code chips, which 3 machine guns, 3 magnums, and the erasement. This is a lot of decrossing potential for Dustcross, which, I mean, we saw last game how strong Dustcross is, and Nonstopmop is going for a similar playstyle. They want to find the uninstall, they want to find their Bug the Thunder very early, so the start of this matchup might end up being very difficult for Nonstopmop. So I'm looking forward to see how they try to play around these cursor options.
Yeah, definitely. It is going to be an interesting early game between these two players, with all these cursor chips flying out of Soul's hands and just gunning for Nonstopmop's Dust Cross, most likely. It will be very difficult. I would imagine that Nonstopmop might want to use that full cust relatively early, unless they manage to pull a substantial defense against cursor chips like their Life Aura, for example. I think that would be the only way I would feel safe in this early game.
And I mean, to be honest, even then, Nonstopmop decided against going for the first barrier. So if SoulXCross is able to mash fast enough, then the Magnum might be able to come out even before the full cast finishes. So even then, even with an instant full cast, Nonstopmop isn't quite safe.
Yeah, that is true. So the early game mind game in terms of protecting that Dust Cross versus Soul's determination to destroy that Dust Cross, it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. And Nonstopmop, it is interesting to note here. I like this folder. I like this build quite a lot, because even though it is a high HP BDT with slow gauge, so it looks kind of pretty typical at first glance. But you can actually see, there's no bubble stars, even though it would be in code in G code. So there's no bubble stars to combo with the BDT. And even though you might say, well, doesn't that make the folder a bit weaker? I really like what they chose to put in exchange for these chip slots, which is the Poison Pharaoh PA. I think there's a lot of style, and there's a lot of oomph when you actually manage to execute it. I think it's a fun PA to use, and especially in 6 because it's actually so fragile. Because it's fragile, and the rate of the damage isn't obscene. It's not so high that you would be vaporized by it in a single turn usually. So it is quite interesting to see whether or not the value from that is going to materialize in this matchup. And definitely the extra panel grabs too. That's tech that I can appreciate. While I tend to run panel grabs, not necessarily for back row obstacle access, but to kind of get around permahole fields and allow like a full area lock or more of an area lock for certain chip usage. Still, the 2 panel grabs also very, very nice, very interesting tech from Nonstopmop here. So it will be interesting to see how this set plays out.
Alright, well, let's head into the match.
So I didn't mention this, but one of the trade-offs for Nonstopmop is, of course, going to be that they do not have buster stats. So this is going to be a rush to BDT, where BDT's damage, Dark Thunder's damage, is not dependent on your buster stats, of course. So, but outside of that, there won't be much ability to punish Soul, for example, with Tomahawk Cross or Tengu Cross, because the damage will just be significantly lower than the usual Falzar builds. And here it is, the turn 1 Life Aura. But this is very brave, actually going for a turn 1 slow gauge on top of it. If Soul did pack a Wind Rack in combination with some cursor chips, this would have been potentially quite bad for Nonstopmop. So this gamble did end up working out, it looks like.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that people very rarely know, at least when starting out, that Life Aura actually has a timeout, so it can expire on its own after, I believe, around 3,000 frames, which ends up being around three slow gauge turns. So this is already one turn. I mean, if Soul is really stuck without a Wind Rack, then he can opt for the option of waiting it out.
That is true, but that is far from an ideal situation for Soul. He does not want to, let Nonstopmop Dust Dig for just many turns. But, it looks like turn 2, Nonstopmop Dust Digs and pulls BDT already into an instant full cust. Soul does manage to pull the Wind Rack and use it at the start of this turn, so it should carry over and get rid of the Life Aura from Nonstopmop. But already the value has already appeared here from Nonstopmop's dust digging. And here we go, a very quick BDT drop.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the ways that you can basically make it much more difficult for your opponent to avoid Bug the Thunder is by maintaining area. If you have all of the plus area that Nonstopmop is trying to go for, then even Charge Cross wouldn't be able to completely deny Bug the Thunder charges. Yeah, there it goes. Ooh,
yes. Erase Man does not connect.
Okay, area grab exchange, though Nonstopmop still has that panel grab, which will give him access to the Holy panel, and now Soul is stuck behind that broken panel, unfortunately.
This is a very bad situation for Soul here, not having access to that Holy panel.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to mention that with good movement, Soul would still be able to maneuver around Bug the Thunder, and even in this very limited area. So we've already seen that happen during last stream, where I forget which player exactly, but they were able to avoid Bug the Thunder charge for most of a turn, not being hit by a single one.
Yeah, I do believe in Symes versus Aqua, that matchup as well. Symes played very well around Aqua's BDT. So definitely there is still potential. If you understand the movement of the Dark Thunders, then you can manipulate their movement to the point that it becomes very difficult for your opponent to hit you with their Dark Thunders. However, Soul gonna regain his area using this Grab Revenge.
And it also has an added side effect, or an added benefit of interrupting the charge that is coming out from Nonstopmop.
Oh no.
While breaking these panels is nice to limit the movement, that's not the way Charge Cross is going to deny it. Charge Cross denies Bug the Thunder with his charge shots, so you wanted to get the D-Cross there ideally. Which we'll probably see Soul using to remove Bug the Thunder. Yeah, there it goes.
Well, I believe earlier we saw Soul not managing to line up for the Erase Man of Nonstopmop, not managing to issue a movement upwards to line up, and now we're seeing Nonstopmop wasn't able to step forward to get that Element Man Ice to decross Soul. So, and this Element Man Ice from Soul is going to get blocked by anti-damage.
Fire Sword ends up missing due to range, and the Magnum misses as well. Oh, I think Nonstopmop there paused for a second, thought about chip charging the Invis, but then the curse of the Aqua Spiral.
Yeah, definitely you want to avoid setting up this death flag for yourself, the Aqua Spiral death flag.
I mean, Aqua Spiral in all seriousness is a very strong chip charge that's mostly limited by range, and apparently the curse of if anyone uses it, they somehow end up losing.
Yeah, even with this 1400 HP difference, I would not feel comfortable personally using Aqua Spiral. You might end up losing just off of like the time wasted charging it and then whipping it, and then you're wasting an invis on it. Definitely, even though theoretically, oh no, Nonstopmop, no, don't do it. Okay.
That was very close though. I mean, was that Life Aura good for Soul? Maybe Soul wanted Nonstopmop to go for that chip charge.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So one interesting thing is that, yeah, Soul wants to stay on the Holy Panel to basically face tank with the Life Aura. Otherwise, if he tries to use his charge shot, while it gives him invulnerability frames, that wouldn't protect his Life Aura. So that's a very important distinction to keep in mind.
So Nonstopmop going to go into Tengu Beast on this turn to back B, remove the life aura, continue to release these BDTs. But ooh, losing the Tengu there, although it would have been lost at end of turn regardless, along with the beast.
Oh, nice. Soul being very careful with the movement, but this is basically the main reason why Bug the Thunder players want to use Bubble Stars. Not only do they add in the potential for a 2x, but also this exact situation where you're basically walled by this charge cross.
I do find it unfortunate that Nonstopmop chose to use their Tengu in that way. Now they don't have access to the Tengu back B, which would also be able to manipulate your opponent's movement and suck them into your Dark Thunders. But SoulXCross going into Tengu, or not going to Slash Cross here anyways, so...
And then these machine guns do quite a bit of damage, but Soul gets caught by one of them, and then the anti-damage will protect Nonstopmop from this base finish.
Yeah, unfortunately, all the damage from base does get blocked by the single anti-damage here. Oh, and this Grab Revenge is going to send Soul directly into the Dark Thunder, but luckily, I think it is taken on the Holy Panel.
Oh wow, was that actually what happened? That's really
I'm not
interesting.
sure. The Dark Thunder was definitely on the Holy Panel, but I'm not sure if the reduction, the damage reduction of the Holy Panel was applied there or not.
Ooh, and now Soul going for that Sanctuary, which unfortunately the Groundman is basically sitting there in hand waiting, but their HP is very close. The Groundman will connect, wouldn't be quite enough for game, but Soul is in very difficult position now.
So yeah, especially with this anti-damage. Oh. Ooh, stepping back into the static right there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what happened with that pause. I think Soul might be in chat, so he might be able to give us a bit more insight if he's still around. Oh, and actually, that's a very good point that Salad brings up in chat. Do you want to explain how chip lockout works in Bug the Thunder?
Oh, so when releasing Bug Death Thunder, the Dark Thunders of the Bug Death Thunder, there's a small window in which the Bug Death Thunder user cannot activate chips, and that includes time freeze counters. So what that does is it creates a window where their opponent could freely just attack them with whatever, and there's no counterplay option available. So it's kind of a built-in counterplay option against Bug Death Thunder usage, and that definitely could have actually been used to confirm the base in that instance.
Anti-damage is coming down for Soul's side, trying to protect him from being frozen. And now Soul does have that area with, again, we saw that, I think it was last game, or was it 2 games ago, but Slash Cross, we'll see all the damage that can be done in one turn.
Yeah, previously we saw it with JoeyKobalt versus Virillion, but this time we're seeing SoulXCross against Nonstopmop. We're seeing the Slash Cross damage, and we tend to see it a lot with these high HP differences. That a Slash Cross is a very effective method of quickly closing the gap a bit.
Yeah.
But it was actually very high risk here because Nonstopmop does have both Groundman and Groundman SP, so this could have also been turned around on its head, and Soul would have been the one on the receiving end of a very poor turn.
Yeah, I mean, that could still happen, and the game is basically still starting. Soul will probably...
Definitely. That's definitely the case, but it reaching the end of the turn here does mean Soul has the option to change crosses and avoid this potentially extremely deadly Groundman SP. And we see that he does choose to switch over to Erase.
Base dropping down, which will connect with all hits. I believe it's around 400. Is it 460 damage?
480 it should be. Ooh, this Magnum coming out a little bit early.
Oh, now HP, Soul's being very much ahead on HP and pressuring still.
Yeah, and there's the late Groundman SP. If only had been here a little bit earlier.
Now we see that bug the Thunder. I think as Nonstopmop, I would have taken the Poison Seed in that position because you want to try to basically maximize your ability to go through your hand, even though you want to wait for the PA. In this position, any extra damage, any tick damage that you're able to force on the opponent is going to be good. Ooh, nice.
Ooh, dodging the Erase Tail. Very, very nice. Oh, but unfortunately the second one lands, and about Undershirt Nonstopmop does get taken into this game 3 here.
I mean, I think pretty much in game 1 and game 2, we've seen the pretty much ideal situation that either of the players want to have. So Soul wants to maintain pressure, have a consistent position where he can land his charge shots, whereas Nonstopmop wants to survive with that Dust Cross, which looks like an interesting play. They're deciding against going for it. They want to maybe keep it until later in the game.
Ooh, there's the Groundman SP. We'll connect for a good chunk of damage here. Not against SoulXCross, but still a very respectable amount.
Now there is also the Invis, so Nonstopmop does have the option of going into the anger play that we've talked about in the previous game, which looks like that's what they will do. Let's see what they end up taking to the next turn. Ooh. While Eraseman can be a very strong option for a 2x since it stops invis and anti-damage, it's obviously not ideal. I mean, Groundman SP would have been amazing to have with a 2x.
Yeah, doubling Groundman SP would turn it from a 390 damage to 780.
Yeah.
And if your opponent is in SoulXCross, then that's an almost instant deletion, actually.
Yeah. And yeah, I think Nonstopmop in chat is saying that exactly. Anger plus the Groundman SP would have been an interesting play to go for. Ooh, and there goes the Anger. Ooh, unfortunate TFC from Soul. It probably didn't mean to have that happen. Now he will lose the anti-damage as well as taking the hit. Oh, I think that machine gun connected 4 times.
Yeah, definitely a lot of hits there.
Oh, Fire Sword ends up missing again. I'm surprised Soul isn't holding on to that a bit more, but I guess he does have, was it the +1? So he probably wants to try to go through his folder.
Soul should actually have custom too, so
Okay.
so it does have a little bit of wiggle room within the chip selections. So I am surprised that the Fire Sword isn't coming out as either part of a Beast or being charged with SoulXCross.
Ooh, Eraseman, even with that warp step. Yeah.
ground man connecting from Nonstopmop, and a very interesting time freeze chain a little bit earlier. I do believe Soul was caught out mashing a little bit there on that Magnum, but it was going to be countered by the Invis regardless. It could have still been used to break some of these panels and trap Nonstopmop. Bug Death Thunder being dropped by Nonstopmop here, but SoulXCross using Sanctuary to mitigate some of the incoming damage.
Ooh.
Oh, and the second hit of the Beast Charge does pop the anti-damage from SoulXCross.
Yeah, being -1 on area, it makes dodging Bug Death Thunder much more difficult. And we see that there, although these holy panels are making it a lot better for Soul to at least take the hits if he has to.
Ooh, and this is what I want to see. It is not quite back row Poison Pharaoh, but just being able to drop it on this panel would be extremely bad for Soul because of the holy panels actually protecting it a little bit more as well. So this will be a lot of damage coming in.
Actually, I am a bit surprised on why Nonstopmop decided to start with the Poison Pharaoh instead of just an air grab. That would have allowed them to go for a back row object.
Yeah, maybe predicting a grab revenge. I'm not sure if it was used from Soul yet.
Well, now, yeah, so this Holy Aura is able to keep Soul alive for at least this turn.
Yeah, unfortunately, these Dark Thunders, they will not do enough damage to break the life aura. So Nonstopmop does go into Tengu. Nice. Ooh, and does manage to protect against the boosted base. That would have been 720 damage.
Yeah, and
would have easily finished him.
The Windrak at the start there was also very important because base doesn't connect. Oh, okay. That was an ending.
Okay. Did not quite. Every time someone gets deleted without undershirt, I'm always a little bit shook because that's not what I expect. I always expect it to drop to 1 HP first, but okay, that was the end of that set. Well played. Yeah, well played to Nonstopmop and SoulXCross there.
I mean,
I'm not gonna lie. If you guys want to terrorize me, just don't run undershirt.
Yeah, I mean, it was just an ending. And I mean, just to quickly go back on the base play. So Soul wanted to push Nonstopmop into the original 3x3 area because base only hits in these panels. So that's one of the main weaknesses. Obviously, base also doesn't hit on broken panels. So these are the two things in mind that Soul had to keep to basically play around in that match.
Yeah, so luckily Nonstopmop did have defense ready against that base, but still just wasn't able to do that last bit of damage or safely pop Soul's defenses there. So well played again to the two of them, and I believe that was our final set for today.
And yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of very, very explosive matches throughout the day. I mean, every match feels like it just was very fast, even faster than usual, if I might say. I'm not sure if that's actually the case. But a lot of these matches were basically turn 2, turn 3, and then the game ends. I'm sure, I mean, you and the viewers felt that as well.
And in Twitch chat here, Justin X Angel asks, in what world does it make sense to not run undershirt, especially in competitive? Not like this. 4 instances of not like this into Resident Sleeper. Quite a combo right there. Undershirt, definitely the value for it versus the amount of space it occupies in the Navicust is like, it always pulls its weight, right? It is always just really good. But as I said, maybe if you really want to inflict psychological damage to your opponent and to me and to the casters and to anyone who has to watch the match, then don't run undershirt, because you will actually manage to inflict some psychic damage on your opponent by dying to like a Blastman SP on grass. I think Salad actually produced a meme recently about about a Blastman SP on grass versus someone with no undershirt. So, but yeah, typically, you do definitely want to run undershirt.
So I see someone's asking chat, does Poison and HP Bug go through undershirt? HP Bug wouldn't, but Poison or Poison Pharaoh more specifically would go through undershirt. So, I mean, Soul had the float shoes, so Poison panels wouldn't have affected him anyway, but just as general, they do, which I believe we've already seen in the Virillion match, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and I believe certain effects will ignore the undershirt. For example, I believe anti-recovery would ignore undershirt as well. So it's not really an attack. It's not really like a direct damage. Yeah. It's simply a subtraction of your opponent's HP. So it's I guess it's just calculated a little bit differently. It kind of skips the undershirt.
I mean, that was our final match for today. So thank you everyone for watching. Again, I mean, we had so many good matches from yesterday that we basically had to do more, had to do another stream today just to try to cover as many as possible. And that will conclude today's stream. And I mean, said it yesterday, I'll say it again, shout out to Alrysc for being one of the, I believe they were still at the most matches played already with over 33 matches in only 1 week. We still have next week, which will have more streams, so stay tuned to that and make sure to head to the N1GP Discord to get notified when these happen. But yeah, that was the final match for our stream, and this will conclude our stream. Huge shout out to all of our participants. I mean, we've reached a record number of players this tournament, and huge shout out to Neryth for joining me on commentary today, and obviously for Salad organizing the tournament and working very hard on the layout.
Yeah, and thank you as well, playerzero, for simultaneously casting while also running the stream. Very impressive. So a huge shout out to you as well.
I mean, more than happy to do so. I mean, how else is everyone going to watch? So obviously a huge shout out to everyone watching us and basically being part of the community. Otherwise, a community is made with the people that are inside it. So thank you again for everyone, and hopefully we'll see you again next week. Goodbye.